All right, welcome everyone to a special meeting of the Housing and Homelessness Committee. I want to thank my colleagues. I know both of them have made time on a day when we weren't supposed to be coming into City Hall for this. Today is September 25th, it's Thursday, and we just have one item, which is the continuation of the Alliance Bed Plan, which was continued from the last meeting because this committee requested additional information from the City Administrative Office. So before we move into the item, discussion of the item, I want to make sure that we are able to take public comment. Since this is a special meeting, I think you'll just have a minute to speak about this item. So if you want to, there's only one person here. There's two? Oh, okay. Okay, well, you both are welcome to make your way up to the podium, and you can, Mr. Custodio, if you want to,
The roll. Would you like for me to call the roll, Madam Chair?
That would be also great. Yeah, calling the roll would be great. Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Rahman.
I am here.
Councilmember Jurado.
Here.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Present.
3 members and a quorum, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Okay, now we can get started with public comment. And as Mr. Custodio is reading the instructions, if you want to make your way up to the podium.
2 members of the public, when it is your turn to speak, please state your name. You have 1 minute. There will be no opportunity to provide general public comment. We'll inform you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda item, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you're not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you're on topic, you will get 1 brief warning from me or Madam Chair. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic, or if you stray off topic, you will forfeit the rest of your time, and we'll move on to the next speaker.
Go ahead. Welcome, Adam. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Council Member. My name is Adam Smith from the Los Angeles Community Action Network. Was here last week. I'm glad that the questions were asked to see the price per bed. Obviously, they're exorbitant. They include the services that I guess the city gets reimbursed for the county, but it's really mind-boggling to look at. And I'm wondering if, knowing that y'all are on a deadline next week to get this in or whatever, like, I think the public deserves and would really like to see a further breakdown of not just the services, but how much of this is going to food, how much is this going to security, how much is this going to Chrysalis staff and others. Yeah, the money is just really ridiculous. And I brought it up last week. It's painful to listen to this sometimes because the humans that are involved are never in the conversation. It's only about the beds. And to Mr. Blumenfield's point, what happens after June 2027? That should be part of the discussion too, even if you don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I believe we had General Dogon here. Maybe we can just give him a minute. Is that okay, members? So we can.
You can always come back to public comment too if you want.
Okay.
You don't have to close it. You could start.
Yeah. Why don't we keep public comment open?
Yep.
Is he here? No. Okay. Well, let's then start discussions on item 1, and then we can go back to public comment as needed. So you want to read item 1 into the record?
Item number 1, our City Administrative Officer reports relative to the Alliance Settlement Agreement, Bed Plan, and Strategy.
Okay, great. And we have Matt Szabo here from the CAO, who is himself the CAO, the very embodiment of the CAO. Would you like to join us at the table?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Matt Szabo, City Administrative Officer. I am not, because this is an item which was continued from last meeting, I won't go through the report itself again, but I have the presentation set, so if there are any questions, or if we want to go back through the initial report, I'm happy to do that, but I'll do that at your request. What we have before the committee today is a supplemental report provided at the committee's request that includes information regarding costs for each of the interventions, which is contributing to our annual ongoing costs. I did identify in the prior presentation that if we were to move forward with this bed plan, there would still be significant gaps in fiscals 26, 27, and 27, 28 that we would need to fill. We have strategies for filling those gaps, but those gaps are based on an assumption, which we would maintain until other direction is given, that the current interventions that we are funding, we would continue to fund through 26 and 27. So the information that we provided you today is initial information that will help inform the decisions about what we continue to fund and what are the most cost-effective resources for homeless housing interventions. So table 1 in the report shows the total construction costs. So we're looking at construction costs. We're also looking at leasing costs and ongoing services costs. So table 1 in the report shows the total construction cost per bed for beds that are open and in process per the Alliance settlement for tiny home villages, a bridge home facilities.
Sorry, these are construction costs over what time period?
These are construction costs over the 2-year time period. I believe it's 2 years. Hold on one second. It may be the entirety of the construction costs. I just want to make sure that that's.
So over the entire, so it wouldn't be just for this last fiscal year. It would be how much it costs to build these 3 different interventions? Couldn't be, because ABH is from a while ago, right?
Correct. Yes. So this is the total. This is the total cost. And the reason I said that is that we're in other parts of the report, we're looking at a 2-year obligation, trying to compare apples to apples with subsidies. But the table 1 costs are the total construction costs for the state tiny home villages, the bridge home, and the non-state funded tiny home villages.
Quick follow-up on that question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The construction costs, like for the bridge, I'm trying to understand why the bridge home is more than the tiny home village. And do we include, the tiny home village has to be refreshed, what, like every 5 years or something? Versus a bridge home, I guess depending on the bridge home. Some of the bridge homes were meant to be 5-year bridge homes. The one in my district was meant to be a 30-year building. But how do you deal with that?
We're only looking at the cost.
Mr. Szabo, I'm going to put you on pause for just 1 second. I see General Dogon has returned. If you want to make your public comment, and then we can get back to your answer for that question. That way we can close out public comment. Do you want to make your comment? Thank you.
Yes, General Dogon, hello, Ken.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to just real quickly just say that when this is all over with, the city going to meet your plan, for getting the bed plans, but it's still going to be homeless people on the streets, by the thousands, right? And so this is really just wasted resources, money that could be really gone to really house people. It's being detoured just to cram people in shelters that ain't gonna do nothing, right? And then another thing we want to just say too is stop using the name human rights. You LA Alliance, you're not for human rights, right? And really for the organizations and the people, right, that really do the human rights work, you're giving us a black eye. It's very disrespectful, right? Because you're setting a bad standard and precedent on what human rights is. Human rights dictate not shelters, right, but real housing, right? And you need to look that up if you don't know what it is. We represent and we talk to UN rapporteurs annually. We got reports with UN rapporteurs, right? We just didn't wake up in the morning and decide to be for human rights after being defendants in lawsuits for the last 20 years, right? So I would just say to this, just figure out how you can get what you can out of this. As many people housed as possible.
Thank
Right,
you.
because at the time, when 7 people died a day,
Thank,
people that still don't give a damn about
thank,
and real human rights.
thank you.
We get on damn green.
Thank you very much for your comment. And I hope that that is what we're doing in this committee, but I appreciate it. And with that, if there's no other speakers, we can close public comment. Thank you, Mr. Zabo, for your flexibility.
Okay, was there a question that I was
Do you want to repeat your question, Mr.
struck-
You know,
Rubio?
I was just trying to
Trying to
understand,
answer.
I was trying to understand the numbers a little bit in terms of why the bridge homes are substantially more expensive than the tiny homes, and does that include the refresh rate that you have, like you know, tiny homes are supposed to last 5 years and bridge homes longer. Is that part of it, or this is just the cost that it took us to build those beds?
It includes everything that was expended or is budgeted for capital for those interventions. It's the entirety of what was expended or budgeted.
All right.
So the detail of Table 1, as you said, Councilmember, the construction costs range from an average of $53,713 per bed for tiny home villages, $72,000 for bridge home beds, and $85,944 per bed for the more recent state-funded tiny home villages. We also include information on time-limited subsidies. A 2-year cost per time-limited subsidy is $48,618. That is less than the per-bed construction cost of tiny home villages and ABH-style interventions, even when the associated costs of leasing and services for tiny home villages are not included. Annual costs. So if we look at attachment 1, we included annual costs for interim housing sites counting towards the Alliance obligations. The last column in that chart provides the cost per bed for services and leasing.
What page are we on?
I'm sorry, we're on attachment 1.
Okay.
If we go to attachment 1, that provides the cost breakdown for the housing sites and the beds that are currently we're counting towards the Alliance obligation. The far right column in this table provides the cost per bed for services and leasing for fiscal 25-26. So we can, if you look at the last column, you can compare. If you're looking to answer the question, what are our annual ongoing costs? We can look to that right column. So on average, the annual ongoing costs, which include services and leasing for booking agreements, is $83,796 per bed per year. For tiny home villages, it's $2,707 per bed per year. And again, of course, that's because we have the sunk costs of capital. There are no leasing costs for tiny home villages. For other non-tiny home interim housing interventions, it's $43,773 per bed per year, including leasing and services. And then for occupancy agreements, it is $92,089 per bed per year.
And where is this number? Where are these numbers?
I'm giving you averages of what you see in attachment 1. So they're broken out per site in the attachment.
This is further analysis that you're providing verbally.
I'm just providing you the averages of what you're looking at. So we provide information on occupancy,
Fine.
tiny home village, booking agreements, and then other interim housing.
Fine. Okay.
Just
Okay.
a technical question on just to follow. What is, if I may, the capital column in this chart there's a lot of $71,428.
Sorry, Bob, if you, Mr. Bloomfield, if you could speak into the microphone.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I can't hear you.
Just a quick technical follow-up question. I don't understand, I'm looking at the chart, I don't understand the capital costs, and it's listed for all these different hotels as $71,428.57 across all these different hotels.
Like, what are we putting in for capital costs at
Yeah,
hotels?
Yeah, what does that represent? Is that damages? Why is the number the same for every different one, and what does it actually represent?
I will need to confirm, my understanding is that is a damages set aside. It's a flat amount that is set aside for anticipated potential damages. That's all associated with the occupancy agreements and the booking agreements.
But those are different from the capital costs for many of those hotels for the previous year, so can we expect that those numbers would go down? Like, once the actuals are in?
Yes, everything that you see where it says 25, 26, those are all budgeted numbers. So yes, all of the numbers in fiscal 25, 26 will change when
I hear that.
we have
I guess
actuals.
my question is just, would you expect that in actuality, these numbers would go down?
I would expect that some would go down and some could potentially go up.
Right, given the extent of damage?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
It's just an average, it's just an average number that you plugged in for all hotels.
Correct, it's a budgeted number.
Okay.
Just, I think they do, my understanding of the way these are done is that you budget that number so you're not surprised when you do have to pay for damages later, right? And sometimes you pay less, and I think at some points you do pay more, but, okay.
Okay, no, just trying to understand it.
Yeah, no, I know, I was confused too.
And then attachment 2 compares the average daily and annual leases and services costs per unit for various homeless interventions. I will point out that, again, per the numbers in attachment 1, we're giving you the total costs. In attachment 2, for the services for interim housing and for the motels, so for the inside safe motels, for interim housing, below 50 beds and above 51 beds or more, we are including the reimbursable costs. So you can see the total cost, but then of that 83, so for example, for the motels, the average $83,950 is what is spent, but of the $83,950 per bed per year, $40,000 of that is reimbursable per the Alliance settlement. So that's what you're seeing in that second to the last column, is of the total amount expended or anticipated to be expended, how much of it is reimbursable. So again, if we're comparing, staying on attachment 2, if we're comparing the interventions, the cost of one time-limited subsidy slot is $24,309 annually, or $67 daily. And that is the lowest cost, of course, with the exception of safe parking programs. But safe parking programs, that's a different intervention, although it does qualify for the Alliance settlement. They have low utilization rates, and they often operate, as you know, just at night. So that's a different intervention entirely. So in comparing bed costs, time-limited subsidy is the most cost-effective and also the most effective in terms of outcomes, as was detailed in our initial report in our presentation last week.
And I want to underscore for other committee members that the reason we have access to performance data across different interventions is because of the new data that we've been collecting that will, when we get staff for the Bureau, will be housed at LAHD in the Bureau. And so for the first time, we are actually able to look across all of these different interventions and see what are the outcomes, how many people are returning to homelessness, how many people are moving to permanent supportive housing or other kinds of permanent housing, and what kinds, to some extent, what kind of services they're getting across these sites. So I think it's important for us to be using this cost data and the performance data in order to be able to, before we move the money from our UB for interim housing in the second half of this fiscal, to use that analysis to figure out how can we make sure that we're spending increasingly limited dollars towards those interventions that are the most effective. I also wanted to underscore for colleagues that I've sent comments that say that we need to look at the cost per intervention and the performance data across different interventions to the county and to the County Board of Supervisors, because they have been undertaking an effort to see where they can make cuts across their investments next year, but have been doing that without looking at any of these pieces of information. And I think that's really challenging, so I've sent them a letter, and that will soon be posted on a council file here as well, as part of our Measure A work, but it's definitely high time that we've been doing that work. I have some questions before we move forward. So the city already funds a number of TLS slots, right?
Yes, we do fund slots currently.
And can you explain to this committee again how people who are in those existing slots, the turnover on those slots, like how they will be or will not be counted toward the Alliance? If you could explain that one more time, I think it would be helpful.
So what we would be counting for our Alliance obligation would be new placements. So if we were to fund, and it is likely that we will fund in a different way. For example, the slots that we funded towards the roadmap obligation was braided with state funding, loss of funding, and county funding. It is, for the purposes of the projections here, we're assuming that we will be funding solely, will be the sole funder of these slots. And they would be new placements with new individuals, new leases that would have a start date consistent with the year, whichever fiscal year, either this year, next year, or the year after. And we would count those new placements as placements compliant with the Alliance obligation, which is separate and apart from any of the placements that were made under the roadmap.
Okay. Looking across these costs, it's clear, I think we all have known this for a long time, that the Inside Safe hotel costs are among the higher cost interventions. I also have a leased hotel in my district, and it is among the higher cost ones as well. So I want to be very clear that, you know, I've used that. The judge has asked every council district to meet an obligation, and we proposed a number of obligations in our district. This was the only one that ended up moving forward with the approval of the CAO. It is also on the higher side for the leasing costs. So this is not this is just part of our discussion, and I want to be upfront about that. We did lower the cost through double occupancy at our hotel. And I just wondered whether double occupancy, which was discussed during the budget cycle, has been in any of the Inside Safe rooms, and whether that double occupancy rates have been incorporated into this analysis.
I believe there have been some instances where
For TLS slots, I want to ask two things. One, you're recommending moving the money out of the master leasing program. Based on our discussions with LASA, the operational costs of a master leased unit come to about $126 per unit if you lease an entire building, and then the TLS slots are used for the rent. And so it still feels like a relatively cost-effective intervention for us. So is there a reason why you're recommending moving money out of a relatively cost-effective intervention to a different pot of money? Has this been discussed with LASA in the meantime? Because I know this came up in our last discussion. Councilmember Jurado had also asked about it.
Yeah, it relates to, since we do only have
Multiple individuals in a single apartment. So splitting the rent for a 3-bedroom unit, like a shared housing facility. That has the additional advantage of the way the TLS lots are structured. If you don't use the full amount of the rent, up to $2,000 per month, you can actually hold on to the voucher for longer, have a longer time to transition into self-sufficiency, which is the hope for the program. Are shared housing eligible for this?
yes, and that would be up to the service provider that's securing the housing. And yes, so it is part of the advantage of the TLS program is there are a number of ways that
We can stretch those
we
dollars.
can stretch it, that one subsidy for 1 year could cover more than one person.
Okay.
And we may not need to use the full 2 years for one person, and we can add more, we can house
Or
more
we
people.
can keep that person housed for
Correct,
longer.
correct.
Okay. Okay, other questions from members? Sure. Councilmember Jurado, I'll just check in and then we can come back to you, Councilmember Bloomfield.
Okay, thank you. We saw years of inside safe beds not being counted, and then all of a sudden during a budget hearing, it was announced that they are now counted. Are there any other beds that have come online since the settlement agreement was signed that are not currently counted toward the Alliance settlement?
Not, so I'll answer it this way. There are no beds that have come online since June of 2022 that were not either counted towards our roadmap obligation or our alliance obligation. So as we were still under the roadmap for the first 2 years of the settlement from, actually the first 3 years from 22 to 25, we had an obligation to keep open and occupiable that 6,700 unit number level. So in some cases, new units came on after 2022, but were counted towards our roadmap obligation and not the alliance obligation. So those would be included in our annual ongoing costs, because again, we haven't, this body and the broader council hasn't made decisions on how to reallocate funding. So in some cases, there may be beds that are not in the alliance, but that's because in the alliance numbers, but that's because they were counted as roadmap beds, and therefore, and if they're still open, we would not be able to count them towards the alliance. So one of the other, the alliance, the roadmap beds is part of the broader alliance lawsuit. So a simple answer to your question is no, but you could potentially see beds that are open that aren't on our alliance list because they were counted as roadmap beds.
Okay, thank you. I don't see the city attorney here, but I wanted to know exactly how binding this, and I think there's some amendments that maybe trying to address this, but how binding this bed plan is, and once this is submitted, are we locked into this, or do we have any flexibility to augment it as maybe we need to see fit?
So of course, I would defer to the city attorney, but We are operating under the language of the judge's order. The judge, in his order, did not place any restrictions on the city's flexibility, and we have broad discretion and broad flexibility in the settlement agreement. That hasn't changed. What we have in the bed plan, what we're proposing is a way to complete the obligation of $12,915. We are also setting out updated milestones. And again, although the milestones themselves are not obligations, they are measures by which we will be tested to ensure that we are on track. So as we are reporting quarterly, it's important to the greatest extent possible, meet or exceed the milestones. Again, although it's not a requirement in the settlement, it is a measure to judge how well we're complying.
Okay. I have a couple more questions. With regards to the La Casa funding, one thing the new report didn't address is what changes the CAO believes La Casa guidelines would allow us to use La Casa funding for TLS for people currently experiencing homelessness. Last time we were here, we talked about those provisions that is intended to be temporary and short-term. For example, the RPHP guidelines that say that the funds are not intended to provide supports or services to people experiencing homelessness, nor to provide permanent housing assistance longer than 6 months. In addition, the guidelines also specify that sheltered homelessness is homelessness. So how would we transition people on the street or people existing in interim or emergency shelter into TLS slots?
So there were amendments made. I believe it was last week at the La Casa board, which did allow for individuals who are transitioning from interim housing into a time-limited subsidy slot to qualify for that time-limited subsidy. We're counting time-limited subsidies as permanent housing, so that is consistent with the intent of the La Casa side of Measure A, and there was flexibility given also on the timeline. So given the updated guidelines, we believe that the funding under the renter protection category of the La Casa funding can be used for time-limited subsidies for individuals experiencing homelessness if they're in interim housing and can transition to permanent housing provided by the TLS.
Do you have those amendments? Because La Casa hasn't published them yet.
I do, and I certainly can provide them to your office. I don't have them here with me.
And Ellie, was that okay. The last one is looking to end of the settlement. TLS is time limited, and in 2 years, when the TLS expires and the line settlement is over, what is the plan? Are we going to let 2,000 households fall back into homelessness if they're not able to increase their income?
So that is, those are decisions that are rightly to be considered and made by this committee and the broader council in our annual budget and throughout the year. And the goal of this bed plan is to comply with the settlement, to establish the beds, and to return and to then get out of the settlement, to end the settlement, so that you have the full authority to determine where and how to spend our precious and scarce resources on housing homeless individuals. So we're not making any assumptions about what 2027 or 2028 looks like, other than it is the goal of this plan, and all of the recommendations that come from my office are aimed towards complying with the settlement to return full jurisdiction of this issue to the council.
And I wanted to underscore, Councilmember, that the last presentation made by kind of the outcomes of the time-limited subsidy working group. Part of what that working group is trying to do is to increase the information available about progress towards, self-sufficiency and income, as well as improve case management for people who are in the TLS program. Even just helping them to apply for existing subsidy programs like disability payments, or if they're, eligible for anything else. And I think we need to do much better at that, because a lot of the limited information that we do have suggests that the question that you're asking is really a good one. It's that people are in the programs, and at the end of the programs, they still don't have greater income. And so they'll, without continued subsidies, they might end up losing those homes again. And I think we have an opportunity to try and make that better as we move forward. But please continue.
Yeah, that was my last question, was exactly that point of, with the limited funding that we do have, how are we identifying how we can do that better case management so we can have better outcomes? I know that we now have like the metrics to jump off from, but how do we address it, So I guess that's something in our committee we'll continue to be working on and looking towards.
And we've asked them to come back to us with a pilot that can help us identify how that happens. I don't think these questions have really been delved into, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just deeply concerned that this approach to fulfilling the settlement is short-sighted, and we'll be failing lots of people. And I know we all feel that burden and fear. So, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bloomfield.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Councilwoman Jurado. I agree wholeheartedly with your point and your concern. I think that's what we are all concerned, and Chair, you've been expressing it. Thank you for stepping up with the county on Measure A and engaging there. I think at the end of the day, we have to look at this TLS as a floor, not a ceiling. We need to continue to figure out ways to add resources and other things besides the TLS, and the TLS without the services is just warehousing. So it's got to have the services, it's got to have the county engagement. That's where the money is for the services. Otherwise, we end up in the same cliff that we're ending up now with the LASA's TLS, where we're hitting that cliff. And we're just sort of postponing things as opposed to actually digging in and helping people transform and gain independence. So all that being said, I mean, if we're looking at this as a floor and a minimum, and we're going to focus on doing extra sites and working with the county, then that's a good way to go. I did want to ask about the ED1 stuff. We've been building 100% affordable, which is great. But those units now need to be matched to TLS so we can ensure that these 100% new affordable units are part of the solution for the Alliance plan and don't just get sort of eaten up by the county. Or is that something that's on your radar, and how do we make sure that happens? Because the ED1 has been very successful in getting actual construction units out there.
Yes, that would be, and that is part of the obligation of the service provider that will run the program to secure the housing units. So those available vacant units are the kind of the first pass at for placing these individuals.
First pass, meaning?
I would need to defer to the service provider, to LASA, for determining for a better explanation as to which units and how those units are selected for inclusion in the program.
Right, because I mean, not here, not now, but I'd really like to delve into that and how these units are placed. It's a tired song, but I'm always singing it about. I mean, I just had a recent building open up. We shed blood, sweat, and tears. 101 units. How many people got in from my interim sites? 4. And that's because while we have the CES and the alternate CES, there's also DPH and DMH have their own lists, and it's a big black box in how they decide who gets in where. But that's another story. So I've got some amendments which I've shared, and I think they complement the ones that you're putting out there, and,
Yeah.
and happy to move forward.
So I just wanted to say, colleagues, that while I am broadly in support of moving forward with a larger investment in time-limited subsidies, I am not comfortable with making funding recommendations about identifying ways to fill the gaps in the original analysis that was presented in our last meeting, because without looking at the supplemental information about the costs per intervention and trying to see whether we can identify potential cost savings through methods like doubling up or moving off of some of our highest cost interventions and into interventions that are lower cost but that still generate really good outcomes for the people that are in them, I would feel very uncomfortable about committing our limited dollars this year to that. So I wanted to suggest, colleagues, that we approve the proposed bed plan, which is the first recommendation under the CAO report, and approve the second recommendation, which is the repurposing of the time-limited subsidies, master leasing dollars for the time-limited subsidies, but that we strike recommendations 3 and 4 and replace them, strike recommendations 3 and 4 and replace them instead with an instruction to the CAO and LAHD, HRNA, and the mayor's office to undertake the analysis that was asked of them in the budget, which was in Exhibit H, Action 32, Instruction H, and use that analysis to really determine gaps and identify where these gaps are coming from, and to then make funding recommendations about how we meet this year's alliance obligations as well as for the next 2 years. And so I have that written up as an amendment, as well as some other amendments. I don't know, colleagues, you have them printed for you. Luigi, do you recommend that I read them into the record?
Yes, Madam Chair, please.
Okay, so recommendations 1 and 2 are the same as in this report. I want to strike out recommendations 3 and 4 here, and instead of recommendation 3, put instruct the CAO to work with LAHD, HRNA, and the mayor's office to propose cost-saving strategies as instructed in Exhibit H, Action 32, Instruction H of the 25-26 adopted budget, and report to council in 45 days with revised funding recommendations for fiscal year 25-26, 26-27, and 27-28 to meet the city's alliance obligations. Item 5 stays the same, recommendation 5 stays the same, and then I have 2 additional recommendations based on the work that we've done with TLS. We're adding a recommendation to make sure that we can collect performance indicators, which will mean we have to use a fiscal agent to administer these funds. So this instruction is instruct CAO to work with LAHD and LASA to amend and execute contracts with TLS providers to ensure that the city's alliance bed plan commitments are fulfilled in a timely manner for 25-26, and that performance indicators are able to be collected. And then finally, instruct the CAO to work with LAHD and LASA to report back on a unit identification strategy for the city's commitment to fund and operationalize another 2,130 TLS slots. So those are my amendments, and we believe that these amendments will still fulfill the goal of us approving a bed plan for the court while keeping our authority to analyze our funding over the next 3 years before we have to move the funds out of the UB into our spending account. So, and Mr. Bloomfield, I know you have additional amendments, most of which I'm comfortable with. I have one piece of feedback, but please go ahead and read them into the record. Oh, could I get a second for my amendments?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, and you want me to read in the proposed amendments, additional ones? Be number 6 would be instruct the LAHD to develop an inventory list, and I've passed these around, so hopefully you all see them, to develop an inventory list of affordable housing projects developed in the city with contact information of developers and/or property managers, and develop a plan to reach out to affordable housing developers and property managers to accept TLS subsidies, including the option to contract out this function for TLS and master leasing of buildings. The next one, 7, instruct general services to identify in 30 days public and private parcels feasible for safe parking, safe sleep village, and safe camping parking program. 8, instruct the CAO to procure necessary equipment and contracts to establish safe sleep village / safe camping program. 9, instruct the CAO with the assistance of the city attorney's office, excuse me, to ensure the ability for the city to modify the bed plan as an additional housing option as resources become available to implement. That's what Councilwoman Murata was talking about. And then 10 is instruct the CAO to ensure the city take the lead in allocating TLS slots, not LASA, and explore contracting with a fiscal agent for the administration of TLS program on behalf of the city. 11 is to instruct LAHD to engage with ULA COC to identify solutions for expiring TLS. And then finally, to instruct the CLA with the assistance of the CAO to report on agreements with the county related to lease-up policy and process for permanent supportive housing built within and funded through the City of Los Angeles.
So I'm happy to second those, Councilmember Blumenfield. I had one request on what's numbered as 12 here,
Okay?
which is to include LAHD, which really manages the
Sure.
PSH program, to be instruct the LAHD and the CLA to report on this.
Great.
And then for item 10, or your recommendation 10 here, or amendment 10, I understand the intent of this amendment, Councilmember. We don't have, realistically, for the time frame that we need to move forward with the time-limited subsidy program to meet our alliance goals, which means that we have to make sure that people are in the units. Like, they have to complete lease up.
Right.
I don't think we as a city have the capacity to take on the direct management of this program right now, or at the pace that we need to. Although I think it is certainly something that we could do next year, or if we plan for it and prepare for it. So what I would recommend here is to ask LASA to do the same thing with TLS that we've done for roadmap sites, or for, on interim sites where we have a prioritization, which has, in my district, has been very effective as a way of,
To do what?
for interim sites that are part of our roadmap settlement. We are able to prioritize individuals, like the council offices are able to prioritize people for getting in. And so it's something similar where we're able to prioritize people from city interim sites, or people from city being kind of addressed through city outreach efforts.
We used to be able to prioritize that, but that got taken away from us.
We still can for some sites, but not for all. So we can still do it for some of our roadmap sites. And that's what LASA said in our meeting on that a few weeks ago. And I'm happy to reference it. But I think we've had a pathway in the past where LASA was able to prioritize city residents for city resources. And I would, just because of, in the instance of making sure that we have people in units as quickly as possible so that we can meet our alliance goals, I too want to be rid of this settlement oversight as quickly as possible. I would just ask that we
How about we put the words?
provide flexibility in that, because
How about we put the words "when feasible," so that it's sort of clear that that's the direction we want to go, but it also opens it up so that it's not an absolute. So just a thought. I'm open to other ideas, but instruct CAO.
well, I think that actually undercuts your point, and I want to make sure that your point is met. Like, I want to say that we are able to prioritize people from our city interim sites for our TLS dollars, right? Which we'd like to
Right.
see. So I'm not sure exactly how to word that, but I don't want to undercut that effort that, or that the point that you're
Right.
trying to make here. But I do want to make sure that we're grappling with the lack of capacity that we have at the city to take on something like contracting and matching. We don't, realistically, we will not have that for quite some time, if we were to determine that we need it. I don't know whether we don't. Yes, correct.
What's that?
Shaking his head. Yeah, right.
That we don't what? We don't have the
We don't have the capacity to take on this effort right now, not in a timely fashion for the Alliance, so,
Right.
yeah.
No, and I don't want to, the goal is get people into the units. That's first and foremost. As you hit on, I am very worried about
Yeah,
us being able to have some agency over that.
right.
So that's where this came in terms of trying to turn that into a intent rather than an absolute.
So could we say something like, instruct LASA and the CAO to report, the CAO and LASA to report back on how city,
How to ensure the city takes the lead in allocating?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
How the city, yeah, or how clients being served by city resources can be prioritized for our TLS slots,
Okay.
right? Is that all right?
That'll work.
Okay, great. So,
Madam-
and we'll
Madam
make
Chair?
sure that comes back
Right.
in a meeting very soon so that we can take a look at that.
Madam Chair, can we get a clarification on that?
Sure. So instruct LASA and the CAO to report back to this committee in 30 days on how clients served by city resources can be prioritized in city-funded TLS. Does that work, Councilmember?
That works.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
okay, all right. So with that, let's move forward with this item as amended.
Councilmember Rahman.
Yes,
Councilmember Hirado.
As amended?
as amended, yes.
Okay. I am voting yes, but I am deeply concerned about this TLS method to fill the gap. But I'm voting yes, not because I think it is a good idea. I'm voting yes because we have to submit something next week. And Matt, you have assured me that it is entirely flexible. And I would like to request that we use this committee to urgently come up with a plan that doesn't risk thousands of households falling back into homelessness. And I'm committed to that, and I know my colleagues are. And so I'm voting yes, but,
With reservations.
Yep.
Grudgingly.
Yes, I hear you. That's how a lot of my
Begrudgingly,
votes are.
Agreed.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
What she said.
3 ayes, and this item is approved as amended.
And thank you, Mr. Zabo, for being here. Thank you to the CAO staff. I know this was a lot of work, and I want to thank you for all the additional information that you put together very quickly. We appreciate it.
And Madam Chair, we just need to take a vote to note and file the CAO report dated 9/24/2025.
Sure, yes. Do we need to call the roll on it?
Yes.
Okay,
Councilmember Rahman.
yes.
Councilmember Hirado.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
3 ayes, and that item is noted and filed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, I believe this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, again, for your flexibility and agreeing to meet today, and same to all the staff members who showed up today. Thank you.